Hi guys, Ian Johnson from driversuccess.com. Today we're going to take a look at min-max inventory management or min-max supply chain management. And in doing this, there's a lot of companies right off the bat that are very apprehensive about min-max or running that kind of supply chain strategy because they equate managing inventory to high holding costs. So they're not crazy about having a minimum and maximum amount of inventory. So in our analysis, we're going to start off with the negative aspect of min-max. But then we're going to show you why there's a lot of positives to this supply chain strategy and why it's probably more ideally suited to your business model. Okay? So number one, we're going to take a look at holding costs. Holding costs are very simple and easy to understand. Holding costs pertain to the cost to hold inventory without sales. Okay? So the first cost is financing. All right? Your company, like every company, basically uses outside financing in order to purchase inventory, whether it's raw materials, finished goods, what have you. So financing is a concern because the longer you hold inventory, the more you have to finance it. It's much like carrying a balance on a credit card, okay? So, you have an interest rate on a loan with a bank, and you can take that yearly interest rate, let's say it's 5%, you can divide it by 365 days in a year, that gives you your daily interest rate, and then you can take your daily interest rate and you can multiply it by the cost of goods sold, and that's going to give you your cost to hold inventory on a daily basis. So the first aspect of holding costs are the cost of financing, okay? The second aspect is obsolescence. Now, the longer you hold a product in your inventory, the less likely your market's going to want to buy it. So, you're going to have to either discount it or basically sell it at a liquidated price or do something to get rid of it. So obsolescence is expensive. Damage is a concern as well, okay? You're going to be moving inventory around a lot more frequently if you hold it longer. So damage is a concern. And then you've got issues pertaining to the per unit freight costs on incoming parts, okay? The cost to get parts into your warehouse is a huge cost of inventory. That's a concern in terms of holding costs with min-max. Then you've got things pertaining to insurance and, warehouse management, counting, okay? So there's financing, obsolescence, damage, per unit freight costs. These are all major concerns. Now, when companies take a look at their holding costs of inventory, it's not uncommon once these are analyzed to apply a 3% holding cost for every single month you hold inventory without sales. Some companies kind of scoff at this, but once they do the analysis, they end up finding that 3% is pretty standard. So yes, if you had $1 million worth of inventory value on hand month to month, you are paying a substantial amount of money in order to support that cost, especially if you have issues with damage and obsolescence. So yes, in min-max, holding costs are a concern. But this is where companies often ignore the other aspect of managing inventory. There are costs to hold inventory without sales, but the other cost of inventory is lost sales cost of inventory, okay? Lost sales is a direct cost of inventory. Okay? Because what happens when you don't have inventory to make a sale? You lose gross profit. You lose a customer. And if you've decided not to let that happen, you're going to rush parts in, which is going to increase your per unit freight costs on incoming parts. And then you're going to have to pay overtime to get someone to take it and receive it. So look, lost sales cost of inventory is a direct cost of inventory, just like holding costs are. And that's why min-max comes into play. Because min-max allows you to do what's called a safety stock, okay? Safety stock allows you to avoid the high cost of lost sales. Now, safety stock equates to guarding against an inventory stockout, okay? And when you want to look at a stockout in your inventory, you measure it by lost gross profit. You measure it by lost customers, because if you don't have the inventory, your customer's going to go somewhere else to get it. And when companies say, I don't want to lose that sale, what do? They rush parts in there from their supplier, they pay overtime, then they rush it out to get to their customer in order to salvage the relationship. So keeping inventory levels low does not work, okay? So holding costs are a concern in min-max, but min-max also helps you avoid lost sales costs of inventory, okay? The cost of losing sales because you didn't have the inventory. And you can use a safety stock to guard against that by having what amounts to a minimum and a maximum inventory level, okay? Now, the reason why companies should be running min-max is especially, the most important point is that if they're running a cyclical, if they're operating, sorry, in a cyclical and seasonal demand market, okay? In this case, you know you're going to get an order in a specific quarter, but you don't know what month it's going to fall in, okay? So basically, you know, min-max is ideally suited to the cyclical ups and downs within a market where you have busier and slower periods of the year, okay? And you know, you don't know exactly when a sale is going to come, but you want to capture those opportunistic sales, so you have a safety stock. Otherwise, if you don't have the safety stock, you encounter lost gross profit. Okay. Now, what you want to do when you're looking at min-max is you want to measure holding costs, okay, which is this 3%. Okay, and you want to measure holding costs versus volume purchases. Okay? So, for example, let's say you have a product line with a 25% gross profit, but you have to hold it for 4 months in order to make a sale. Well, you could take, theoretically, you could take the 3% times 4 months, which is 12%. 25% minus 12% is 13%. Does it make sense? Yeah, it probably does, if you can avoid damage and obsolescence being an issue. Okay? And so basically, you have to measure your holding costs in those situations when it comes to min-max. But the other benefit and the most important aspect of min-max is that it allows you to use your economies of scale. Okay? And purchasing volumes. Okay? So you're going to use your economies of scale to lower your price on parts. So you're going to lower your price to purchase product, and you're going to lower your per unit freight costs on incoming parts. Okay? So look, there are some drawbacks to running min-max. Okay? Yes, you're going to come across holding costs, but you have to be aware of lost sales costs and inventory. These are the two main cost drivers of inventory: holding costs and lost sales. Okay? And if you ignore lost sales, you're going to lose gross profit, you're going to lose a customer, you're going to come across a stock out, which is going to cost you market share. And, you know, look, there's nothing better to manage the cyclical and seasonal order patterns in your market than to run a system that allows you to capitalize on opportunistic sales, okay? And yeah, measure the holding costs of 3% per month versus high volume purchases. And remember, min-max allows small companies to use their economies of scale and their purchasing power to lower their prices on parts and to lower their per unit freight costs on incoming parts, okay? So that's it. Don't just, you know, throw away min-max and say it's too expensive. Match an inventory to your business model, to your market, to the needs of your customers, to their order patterns. Go with what works for your company, not with something that you've read out of a book or have heard from somebody else working somewhere else in another industry. So that's it, min-max inventory management. Take care. Ian Johnson, driversuccess.com. Bye-bye.